Hi, this is James Garden, CineTechGeek, and I'm at the Filmlight booth with Andy here. Now, Andy, Filmlight is a very well known as being one of the premium, best of the best color grading solution. The biggest post houses in the world typically have one of these solutions in their production facility. Now, I wanted to get Andy on today because instead of just showing us all the new bells and whistles that Filmlight are bringing to the market this year, I wanted to talk to the colorists on a different topic. And I'm hoping Andy will help us there in the terms of high dynamic range is becoming more and more prominent. Over the last 3 years, it has matured significantly, and the workflows are quite stable and known. And everyday streaming solutions providers, etc., are demanding deliverables of high dynamic range. Now, can you tell us firstly, what sort of growth do you see in high dynamic range from your perspective at the moment?
Yeah, we think it's a really hot topic, and for the last couple of years. So, basically all around the world, we now see a huge growth in demand for high dynamic range content, mostly coming for the television market, like episodic television series, but also for the a little bit in the theatrical market for the cinemas.
Yeah, and let's just on that topic, and I've said this in a number of videos, you would probably know this, DCI has made some press announcements, they've released some letters flagging the fact that Cinema 2.0 with more luminous levels and better blacks is coming down, and in the very near future we're going to have high dynamic range like Dolby Cinema type masters, but for general exhibition by anyone who can buy a projector off the shelf. So again, high dynamic range is growing and growing and growing. But the topic here though is trying to convince the people who make the content owners, to actually jump to the high dynamic range workflows using different codecs and other things. And there's discussions, and trying to convince them to do so is quite difficult. So I thought I'd talk to Andy because he's experienced color graders who have had this problem. And how do the color graders share the information and for the producers or the owners of the content to understand that putting a little bit of extra money into creation of high dynamic range, or the capability of doing a high dynamic range mix down the track, is worth it, due to the fact that if they do decide to go to a streaming solution and it is required to be in high dynamic range, if they didn't do it right in the first place, then they haven't got that option. So how does a color grader convince their content owner to go down that path?
Yeah, I think the best argument, or that works the best, is from the creative point of view, that with a really good HDR grade, the audience can immerse deeper into the content. So the idea is not to produce HDR demo content to showcase the technology. So the audience should not constantly be aware of, oh yeah, I'm watching that series now in HDR. But if it's really well made, then, and this is also what's happening today for lots of shows, then the audience can just immerse a little bit deeper into the story and have a little bit better experience, and then maybe continue watching. Or
so what you're saying is that the reason why people like Netflix stipulate HDR, because it's a point of difference for them, and being a point of difference in terms of a better type of experience, you're more likely to pull in the eyes of the consumer, because you're looking at a premium experience, and that's what the consumers are really looking for, and that's the advantage.
Yeah, I think with the HDR technology over the internet, for example, with streaming providers, they can showcase advantages in technologies easier, because they're not sticking to a fixed format that they are broadcasting. But we also see a little bit of now in the recent year of growth of HDR in the regular broadcasting area.
Yeah, do you think HDR will take off a lot in like just typical government or work, or domestic, weddings and other stuff like that? Do you think that'll ever happen? Just typical content production by the general community?
Yeah, I guess and this will probably be a more later part of the transition, but we see, especially in Europe, I can think of a couple of customers that are delivering episodic shows to government broadcasting stations in HDR in the recent years, and there's also an adoption there.
Oh, so finally though, let's go over a few of your new bells and whistles this year. So what can you tell us in terms of what has developed in the color grading panel and your software in the last year that you're showing off at the show this year?
I guess in general, I think, as you said, I think the workflows are quite mature these days. I think for the whole HDR workflow, the whole the color topic is like quite good. We're in a quite good condition there in general in the industry. But what comes then next is, as soon as you have all the color workflows right, you realize that you need to work spatially on the image. So that means texture, sharpness. That's changing a lot, and so there in the last year we introduced a lot of new tools that were developed based on the feedback of the first colorists doing HDR content for drama, or for basically not demo content for the technology, but real storytelling content. And based on this, we built a lot of new tools to do.
Yeah, so I like to describe things in a way that people may have a relation to. So like we went from standard def to high def, and we had to update the makeup and the sets. There is a slight effect from going from standard dynamic range to high dynamic range, where tools which can help with things which we could not see before are now becoming apparent, and so tools are being invented into the solution to allow the color graders to better address problems or artifacts which a high dynamic range grade may bring up that wasn't apparent in previous grading solutions.
Yeah, exactly. So the key thing is a lot of the creative industry, they have some reservations about HDR because they usually say, oh, it's too sharp, I don't like it, and it's not looking cinematic, or they're saying something like this. And we think the reason is not HDR by itself, but it's just by maybe not ideally made or produced HDR. So we especially address this issue. So with our new tools, we give a lot of new like small bells and whistles for the colorists to address these overly sharp topic, for example, and not really bring everything back to SDR, but use the full advantage of the range you have in HDR, the huge palette, but do it in a kind of nice way that's not disturbing to the audience.
So keeping it within because I agree, jumping to these new standards just because it's different can make the producer uncomfortable with what's going on because it's different, and that's the only thing that's wrong. That it's different. It's something that they haven't really seen before. It's better, but because it's different, there's an issue there. And I do see that's a very good way to basically handhold them or give the tools to the colorist to help them transition those people, because it is a transition for them as well into the new world of HDR and HDR deliverables. But thank you very much, Andy, and I appreciate your feedback. And that's it for now for James Gardner at the Filmlight booth at NAB 2019. Bye for now.